Someone asked if I could help them make a crochet poop emoji dog poop bag holder for their dog leash. And I was totally caught off guard, but I thought that was a fun challenge. So I went and I made my own pattern. And today I'm gonna walk you through exactly how I made it so you can make your own too. I think it's a pretty easy pattern and I'm gonna do my best to keep everything beginner friendly. But yeah, so let's get started. Before we get started, let me talk about the materials. I made the emojis with worsted weight yarn, specifically Lion brand Skein tones. I love a pun. It was my first time using this yarn and I actually really liked it. It comes in a bunch of beautiful brown colors. This is actually, you can see it's darker. It was with cocoa, but I thought it might be kind of hard to see on video, so I got truffle for today. I'll be working with a little bit lighter yarn. You're gonna wanna have your roll of doggy bags. I think this is helpful as you go to kind of see sizing and make sure you're on the right track. This one is about 2¼ inches. I don't know if they're all the same size, but hopefully they're about the same size. Now, very important, you're going to need stitch markers. We're gonna be working in rounds, like circles, so it's very easy to lose your spot. I'm gonna use 2 in the video. You definitely need at least 1. So stitch markers, safety pins, whatever you have for that. Obviously, you'll need a crochet hook. The yarn says use a 5mm hook, which I did for this one. And then this one, I did 4.5mm hook. They're very similar in size. This one is a teeny bit bigger, but I think I like using this hook better, so do whatever works for you. We'll need the usual, some needles and scissors for loose ends. And then obviously the eyes. I use just plastic black eyes, and then I cut out some white felt circles and put under them. If you don't want to use the plastic eyes, you can just get some black felt and cut out circles and kind of just glue them all on there. But I kind of like the look with the eyes. Lastly, we have the hooks, which you need to attach the emojis to the dog leash. This is just what I had at home. I think they should fit with most dog leashes, but I like that they're open and I could just push this through a crochet stitch and attach it to the top of the emojis. Depending on what you have or want to use, you might have something like this. This is way too small, maybe like a very teeny leash, no way. But you can't just like hook it on easily. You'd have to kind of sew it in to attach it. So I thought that these would be like a lot stronger to hold. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's everything you need, and let's get started. I have my yarn, my 4.5mm hook, and my stitch markers, so we are ready to begin. So we're gonna start with a slip knot, however you like doing those. The beginning is probably the hardest part, but we'll get through it. And then we are going to chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there we go, we have our 10 chains. And you see this last one right here, the 10th one right before the hook. I'm going to put a stitch marker on this right side right here, just so it doesn't get in the way when we work down the other side of it, because we want to remember the 10th chain later. Next, we are actually going to do 2 more chains. So this is technically a chain 12, but these last 2 chains are going to count as our first stitch, so I kind of wanted them to be separate. Now I'm also going to mark this second chain we made 2, because we're going to want to find that one later. I did 2 chains right here as our first stitch, but we're actually going to be working in single crochets. So it usually should be 1 chain, but I think that it's easier to find with 2. Now we're going to work our first stitch into the chain. So we are going to go into the 4th chain from the hook. So skip over these 3 and then into that 4th one that comes right after our 10th chain that we have the stitch marker in, and do a single crochet. Now do single crochets down the entire chain. 1 into each. Now I'm at the last chain. I'm going to just single crochet into that. And we're actually going to do 2 more single crochets into that last chain, because we're going to turn it around and work on the other side. So that should be a total of 11 single crochets. We have the 8 into each stitch, and then the last stitch has 3. Now we're going to turn the piece and work into the back sides of the chains. So we just did our single crochets into this side of the chain. Now we need to do them onto the opposite side, these little pieces right here, which is the other side of the loop. It can be kind of tricky, but we are going to do 8 single crochets into the back side of the loop. So here is our first one right here, the back side that we're going to use. So I'm gonna kind of use my nail and push it through, yarn over, pull through, and just do a single crochet into that spot. Kind of easier to see once you get one done. Now here is the next one. If you have trouble with this, just keep count. I think it's really easy to mix this up. So we've done 2. Here's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and here is 8. Great, so we did 8 single crochets down those back loops. So now you'll see that we have made it back to our stitch markers. Remember this yellow one? We put that into our chain 10, and now we are going to want to work 2 single crochets into that chain 10 space. So right here. It's always kind of like wonky, but just find some space to get 2 single crochets in where that chain 10 would be. So there's 1. Now I'm gonna try to go into that same space and do 1 more. There we go. So we have finished our first round. We have this stitch marker on our first stitch, which was technically the chain 2 that we added in. We're just pretending it's a single crochet. Then we did 8 single crochets down what we're gonna call the side. And then we did 3 single crochets into that last stitch, which we're gonna call the end. And if we turn around, we have 8 more stitches matching the side. And then here would be another end, but it looks a little bit different than this end. So we have our 3 stitches coming out of the same stitch, just like over here, but our first stitch, this one, is at the beginning of the round, while these 2 stitches are at the end of the round. So there are 3 end stitches, they're just kind of split up in the order that we look at them. We're gonna remember this moving forward in each round. The side will always be 8 stitches until it's not. And the end is where we're going to be increasing and decreasing. So it's gonna be the major areas where we're gonna be adjusting the size and the shape of the poop emoji. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful as we keep going. The sides will always be 8 stitches until they're not, but we'll talk about that later. and then the ends will be the increasing and decreasing, so they'll be constantly changing. But yeah, we're done with row 1, which was a total of 22 stitches, and it's time to start row 2. Our first stitch is going to be a single crochet into that chain space. So we don't work into here, which looks like the first normal spot to look. Your chain, here, let me show you this a little bit better, but here is our first single crochet that we made. It's tempting to want to work into that because it's easier. But right here is that chain that I just removed the stitch marker from. Sometimes I try to kind of like lift this side up so I can just go through both of the chain spaces, but it's not cooperating. So I'm just gonna go through this one side of the chain. But yeah, that's why I have the stitch marker in there, because it can be difficult to find later on. And I wanna make sure that my first stitch of round 2 is worked into that 12th chain. So there is my first single crochet that I made into that chain space. I'm going to mark it so we can find it later. I'm actually gonna use one of these stitch markers because they're easier to use. I love them, but they are a pain because they do fall out sometimes. But yeah, so I marked our first stitch of round 2, which was made into that chain space. Now, like I said, the first stitch of each round will be into that end section, and the end is where we increase, so we're gonna start increasing our ends. So I'm going to do a second single crochet into that same space. So there's 2 into that same space, and that's an increase. Next, we need to work down the side, and we are going to do 8 single crochets into each stitch down the side. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so hard doing this on camera, 8. There, we did the side, started with an increase and then 8 single crochets into each. Now we're at the end again. So these 3 stitches make the end. Now we are going to do an increase into each stitch. So for the next 3 stitches, we are going to do 2 single crochets into each stitch. So you'll see that's one, it's kind of hard, but you'll see that's 1 single crochet into that stitch, go into that same spot, 1 increase. Now we need to do a second increase. So 2 single crochets into the next stitch. And then our third one, we are going to do 2 single crochets into that stitch. Now we finished the increases down the end. Now we're back to the side again. So we're gonna do 8 single crochets into each one. So it's 2, 8. Now we've finished that side, so we're back at the end, and remember we started with our first stitch of the end, so we did our first increase. We need to do a total of 3, so we need to do 2 more increases. So we're going to put 2, this is kind of just tight, 2 single crochets into the next stitch. There's 1, I'm gonna go into that same hole, make 2, and then into the last stitch, we'll do 2 more single crochets. I need to loosen my tension. This is all over the place. All right, there we go. And now we have finished round 2. If you get lost, just make sure that you have 28 stitches. Now we're gonna start round 3, but let me pull the camera back. Now it's time to start row 3. And we're gonna take our stitch marker and do a single crochet into that first stitch. And this will be our first stitch of row 3 or round 3. Now for our increases on the ends, we are going to be working single crochets into one stitch and then an increase into the next stitch. This is only for the end section, so just bear with me, it'll make sense, but it'll make more sense later on. But we just did our first stitch, which was a single crochet. Now we're going to go into the next stitch and do an increase. So one single crochet, and then one more single crochet into that same spot. Maybe, I need to loosen my tension. It's so hard doing this on camera. Okay, now we've made it to the side where we're gonna do 8 single crochets. 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
8. We did 8 single crochets down the side. Now we are back to our end section. So like I said before, we're going to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 single crochets into the stitch after that. 1, 2. Now remember, we have 3 increases at each end. So now we need to repeat that. 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and then 2 single crochets into the next stitch. This will be our 3rd and last increase of this round. So 1 single crochet, and then an increase, so 2 single crochets into the next stitch. Now we've made it to the opposite side, 8 single crochets into each stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we've made it to the other end. We've already started with our first increase, so now we need to do 2 more increases. So 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets into that next stitch. One more. 1 single crochet, and then 2 more into that next stitch. Boom, done. There's round 3. You should have a total of 34 stitches. If you're worried you messed up or something, just go back and count. You can always undo and redo it. I know my yarn's all twisted. All right, here is round 4. So we are going to start by removing our stitch marker, going into that first stitch, making a single crochet, and then marking that stitch again for the next round. After that first single crochet, we're going to do another single crochet into the next stitch. So we have 2, and then into the 3rd stitch, that's where we make our increase. We're going to do 2 single crochets into that same stitch. Look at that one, that one's easier to see. So there's our increase, and that will be the pattern for this round. Now we've made it to the side. We'll do 8 single crochets down the side. 1, 2, 8. There we go, we did a side. Now we're back at the end, and we need to do our pattern of single crochet, 2 single crochets. So I almost missed this one, but 1 single crochet into the next stitch, 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 single crochets into this 3rd stitch. Now we're going to do our next set of increases. So 1 single crochet into the next stitch, 1 single crochet into the next stitch, 2 single crochets into this stitch. And then our last one on this end, 1 single crochet. Next stitch, 1 single crochet. And then the next stitch gets 2 single crochets. Now we are working down the back side, and you're doing 8 single crochets into each stitch. That's 2, right? I hope so. 3. All right, now we need to do our 2 increase sets over here for the other end. So 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets into this one. 3 more stitches, that means we're on the right track. So 1 single crochet, and then I've got cat hair, and then 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets into the last stitch of the round. And that's row 4. You should have 40 stitches. Now at the end of round 4, you might want to grab your doggy bags and kind of check it. I definitely want to make sure that these ends are a little bit longer than the doggy bag. These sides are pretty tight on this one. I think while working on the camera, I was holding my yarn a lot tighter. It's kind of hard to film, but it doesn't really matter too much because this does stretch out a lot because it's yarn, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. If yours goes out a little bit wider, it's also kind of hard to show on camera, but if yours goes out a little bit wider, that's totally fine. It's just more space for the bags. For round 5, we are actually not going to be increasing at the ends. We are actually going to be working single crochets into each stitch all the way around. So take out your stitch marker, do your first single crochet, and then mark your spot so you save your spot. And then keep working single crochets into each stitch. We are actually going to be doing this from rows 5 to 11. So we're going to be doing 6 rounds of single crochet into each stitch. This will make the pattern start to work upward and give us the shape of our poop emoji. So yeah, keep working single crochets into each row for a total of 6 rounds. Make sure you take out your stitch marker and put it back in so you don't lose your spot and can keep count. But yeah, I'm gonna jump ahead, but keep working single crochets into each until you finished row 10. But yeah, I'll see you soon. Hey, I'm back, and I'm actually not done with my 6 rounds of single crochets. I have finished 3. I'm on round 8, so I have kind of like 3 more to go. But I wanted to show you something really quick. We're actually gonna change how we're holding the piece. So we have been working this way around as it's been growing. And as you do these rounds of single crochets, you'll notice it's gonna start curling in. So at one point, you're gonna wanna flip it out. So kind of turn everything out and then kind of push it this way. So now we're going to be working this way around the piece. This is because we want to make sure the correct side is at the bottom and not making it like inside out. So from going forward, we are going to be working into the piece like this. So whenever you feel ready, flip your piece out like me. I'm gonna finish rows 8, 9, and 10, a total of 6 rounds of single crochet. So I'll see you at the end of round 10. So I have just finished round 10. That's 6 rounds of single crochets all the way around, and it gives us some height. You'll notice inside I have my tail end from the start kind of sticking out. Sometimes that's on the opposite side. Sometimes I weave it in, but since it's easy to access now, I'm actually just gonna trim it. And yeah, let's keep going. So we have been working increases at the beginning to make it larger. But now we are actually gonna start using the ends to make some decreases. So we're gonna start to kind of like bring it in to get that kind of rounded shape. So let me show you how we do that. So let's start round 11. We are going to single crochet into our first stitch. Remember, we are working the end. And then we are going to do a single crochet into the next stitch. Now we are going to, instead of doing an increase, we are going to do a decrease into the next stitch. So basically we want to take these next two stitches and make them one. So there's a bunch of different ways to do decreases. Do however you're comfortable with. I like to do the invisible decrease, and to be honest, sometimes I do it wrong, but it doesn't matter. So to do an invisible decrease, normally you would just go through the two stitches like that, but we are going to want to go under and in between. So we're only getting that front loop. Do you see how I split that? Instead of going under like normal, I'm going under and splitting the two. Now while we have that one loop on our hook, we're gonna do the same thing to the next stitch. So not going under two, we're not doing that. We are going underneath and then splitting the V and only taking the first loops from those two stitches. Then I'm going to yarn over and go through those first two loops, but not this last one. And I have two loops on my hook now. And then I'm gonna yarn over and go through those two. So that was our first group of decreases in the end. I'll show you again in a second, but we have to go through the side. So 8 stitches into each stitch to make the side. So 1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
8. Now we've finished our side. We are back at our end and we need to start our pattern of decreases. So to start that, we're going to do a single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches. So 1 single crochet, and then into the next stitch, another single crochet. And now we're back at the decreases. So we need to make these 2 single crochets into 1. If you're not used to doing decreases, I used to struggle with figuring out which stitch to work into next. But if that is a problem for you, you can always put a stitch marker into this 3rd one. Maybe I'll do that right now, just so you can see. Because we're combining these 2, and then afterwards we'll be working into that 3rd stitch. So to do an invisible decrease again, we are going to go into the next stitch, but kind of split them. So I'm only getting that front loop, and then same thing with the stitch after it. So we got 2 front loops right there. I'm gonna yarn over, go through those 2 loops. We got 2 new loops, well, one's new, and then yarn over through these 2, and that is a decrease. So you can kind of see those are kind of pushed together. Now we are going to work into the 3rd stitch to do our 2nd round of decreases. So 1 single crochet, another single crochet into the next stitch, and then a decrease. So into the front loop of this first one, front loop, well, that was quick, of the next one, yarn over through those first 2, and then yarn over through these 2. So we're going to do it one more time to have a total of 3 on this end. Make sure you don't work into that loop that we just pulled up. So 1 single crochet into the next stitch, 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then 1 more decrease. Sometimes I have to use my nail to kind of separate them. So I went through 2. Second one was a lot quicker. And a decrease. So we finished the 3 decreases on this end, and now we're going to do 8 single crochets into the back side. 1, 8. Now we're at the other end. Remember, we started with a decrease, so we need to do 2 sets on this side. So I'm going to do 1 single crochet into the next, another single crochet into the next, and a decrease. All right, that's 1. Now we go to 1 single crochet into the next stitch, another single crochet into the next stitch, and then ending with a decrease. And that is row 11. All right, now we are on to row 12, and we're about to switch things up. We are going to continue to do decreases around the end, but we're also throwing a decrease into our side. So our beloved 8 stitch side is going to turn into 7 stitches. So let me show you how. So remove the stitch marker, and then we are going to start with a single crochet into that first stitch. Then we are going to do a decrease into the next 2 stitches. And now we've made it to our side, which normally we would do just 8 stitches down, but this time we are going to do 3 single crochets. So 1, and then 1 into the next stitch, and then a 3rd into the next stitch. Then we are going to do a decrease, and then 1 single crochet into the next 3 stitches. So 1 single crochet, 1 into the next one, and then 1 single crochet into the 3rd stitch. So you should have a total of 9 single crochets, 7 down the side, and then 2 from the beginning. Now we're on to the end again. So we're going to do some more decreases. So do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and a decrease. One single crochet into the next stitch, and a decrease. One single crochet into the next stitch, and then a decrease. So that will be a total of 3, and we're back on the back side. We decreased the front side, now we gotta decrease the back side to get 7 stitches. So we'll do 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet. So 1 single crochet into the 3 stitches, then we'll do a decrease, and then 1 single crochet into the next 3 stitches. There we go. Now we finished this side. Just also, I want you to note, see how the side is very much starting to kind of like wrap around. It's not in the middle, but we're gonna address that later. All right, so let's decrease the end. So we'll do 1 single crochet decrease. Whoa. And then 1 single crochet and a decrease. There we go, we finished round 12. You should have 26 stitches. If something's ever off, just go back and count, and you can kind of see maybe where you missed a stitch or something. Now let's grab our roll and see how it fits. All right, it's coming together. You can kind of see the shape too, where we increased to come out, and now we're decreasing to bring it back in. Now is the fun part, the mouth. I don't think I took this out. See, it fell out. Luckily, I know we're at the end of the round. Maybe I did, who knows? I'm gonna put it back in for clarity. So we're gonna start row 13, and this is where we make our mouth opening, and the mouth opening will go over the side. But if you notice how I pointed out before, the sides were kind of like shifted, they weren't centered. So we're gonna do something this round to kind of bring the mouth to the center of the piece. But let's just jump in and I'll explain. So we are gonna start the round with a single crochet into the next 4 stitches. So here's our first one. Stay on. 1, another single crochet into the next stitch, another single crochet into the 3rd stitch, and then another single crochet into the 4th stitch. So you know how our ends had the groupings of 3 increases or decreases, and then this end we always had 1 at the start and 2 at the end. We are now moving it around to have 2 at the start and 1 at the end. So this is what this 4 single crochets is gonna be holding the spot for. I'll talk about it more in a minute. So yeah, start with 4 single crochets, and then to make the mouth opening, we are going to chain 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we need to skip 7 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we are going to single crochet into that 8th chain. Now this single crochet counts as the first stitch of this end. These 7 stitches are the side. We did just chain 9 though. That's because we want to give a little bit extra space. So this side in future rounds turns into 9. I hope I'm not confusing you. All right, let's keep going. I am going to single crochet into each stitch around. I know that I just made a fuss about starting the end side of it, but I forgot that doesn't even matter because we're not even doing anything to the ends. We are just working single crochets all the way around. So this round is really about making the opening for the mouth. So yeah, keep going, single crochets into each stitch. So now we're on to row 14, which is going to be single crochets into each stitch. There's the first one, I'm gonna mark it. And then we have 3 more normal ones before we get to the chain. So just keep working single crochets all the way around. And then we are going to work a single crochet into each chain space. So it's easy to kind of miss a chain, so you can count because there's 9 chains. So there's 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, 3 single crochets, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. There we have our 9 single crochets, 1 into each chain space. Now we gotta work back into the round. Here is actually our first single crochet, so don't miss that one. Kind of pulls up with the chain. Yeah. And just keep working a single crochet into each stitch. There we go. That's row 14. Now I'm gonna take a little pause to make sure that my paper baggies fit in to the mouth. It is kind of a tight fit. I didn't want it to be too loose. So you might need to like stretch and pull out a little bit, but yarn's pretty forgiving with that. There. It wasn't very graceful, but it worked. So we're ready to start row 15, and we're gonna go back into the rhythm of working on the sides and the ends. But remember, we did change things a little bit. We used to start with 1 increase or decrease and then 2 on the back end, but now we're gonna be starting with 2 increase, decrease, with just 1 on the back end. If we didn't kind of shift things over a little bit, the smile or mouth would be a little bit over here and just not centered, so that's why we did that. And then also, don't forget, since we did chain 9, there's 2 extra stitches on this side. So this side has 9 stitches, and this side still has 7 stitches. So we're gonna put some decreases in here too to get it back down to 7 so they match. So this row is gonna be increases. We're gonna kind of like bring it back out. So let's start with 1 single crochet, and then mark your spot, and then an increase. So 2 single crochets into that second stitch. 1 and into that same spot, we got an increase. And then our next increase set. So 1 single crochet, and then 2 into the next stitch. So now we're at our side, and we're gonna throw in some decreases. So 1 single crochet, and then a decrease. Then 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, decrease, and then 1 more single crochet. So that just brought our side down from 9 stitches to 7 stitches like before. So both our sides match now. Now we're at the end again. So we're gonna do 1 single crochet. Okay, we did 1 and now 2 single crochets into the next stitch. There's our first one. There's our next increase. So you got 1 single crochet into the next stitch, 2 single crochets to do an increase in the following stitch. One more group, we'll do 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then an increase into the following stitch. So 2 into that stitch. All right, now we're on the side again, and we are going to single crochet into the next 7 stitches. 2, 7. Oops. I need to hold my yarn better, I'm getting all twisted. All right, now we're at the end of this end, and we just have 1 group. So 1 single crochet and an increase. So 2 into the last stitch. There we go. That's row 15. You should have 32 stitches. Okay, so now we have it coming in, and now we're starting to come back out, and we need to go up a little bit. And to do that, just like before, we're gonna do single crochets into every single stitch around for 2 rows. So rows 16 and 17 are both single stitches into each stitch. So I'm going to start here, mark my spot, and keep going around. But I'm going to jump ahead, keep working a single stitch into every stitch for row 16 and row 17. I'll see you at the end of row 17. All right, I just finished row 17. Now I'm on to row 18. We're gonna start with decreases. So I'm gonna do one single crochet as my first stitch, mark it, and then I'm going to do a decrease. Now I'm gonna do one single crochet into the next stitch and then one more decrease. Now we're at this side. I'm going to do 7 single crochets. So that's 1, 7. Now we are at the end again. I'm going to do a single crochet and a decrease. And repeat that pattern 2 more times. Single crochet and a decrease, single crochet and a decrease. Now we're at the side again, so 7 single crochets, 7. Now we're going to finish off this end, a single crochet and a decrease. There we go. We're on to row 19, which is another decrease round. And this time we are actually going to start the first stitch of row 19 with a decrease. So do your decrease and then make sure you mark that as your first stitch. And then we'll do one more. And now we're at the side, so 7 single crochets into the next 7 stitches. 7. Next we'll do 3 decreases because they're at the end. That's 1 decrease.
That's 2 decrease. That's 3 decreases.
Now we're back at the side again. So we're going to do 7 single crochets into the next 7 stitches. Now we're back at the end and we're going to finish with 1 decrease. So that's row 19 and you should have 20 stitches. So we're at round 20 and you know how I've been working so nicely with our sides that are 7 stitches or 8 or whatever down there, and then our ends, which are 3 groups of increases or decreases. Well, that's been great, but we're not doing that anymore. We need to start switching it up and work a little bit smaller to get this smaller piece up here. But yeah, just follow my lead. I'll show you what to do. All right, so let's start row 20. And it starts with a decrease. Into the next 2 stitches, another decrease. And then 6 single crochets into the next 6 stitches. 1, 2, 6. So I guess I did partially lie. We still kind of got the sides. The sides are 6 for now, but that won't last long. So next we're gonna do 2 decreases on this end. So 1 decrease, and then a second decrease, and then 6 stitches into the next 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's getting smaller, it's getting harder to work into. There you go. That's round 20. We should have a total of 16 stitches. Now we are at row 21, and we are going to do the exact opposite of what we just did to get the shape to come back out. So we are going to start with an increase. So 1 single crochet into that first stitch, and then another single crochet into that next stitch, and then 1 more increase, 1 single crochet, and then 1 single crochet into that same spot, and then 6 single crochets across the side. I guess we still do have the side for a little bit, but it's different, okay? 3, 6. And now we have 2 increases. Maybe it's different because the end has 2 increases instead of 3. We were working with 3 before. So 2 into that first stitch, and then 2 single crochets into that same next stitch, and then back to 6 along the side. 6. Now you can see it's starting to curve back out, but now we're actually going to bring it back in. So we're gonna do row 20 again and reverse this. But this will be row 22. It's just the same as row 20. So start with a decrease. Another decrease, and then 6 stitches, 1 or single crochets. I can't keep saying stitches. 2, 3, 6, and then 2 decreases. 1 decrease, and then another decrease into the next 2 stitches. And then a single crochet into the next 6 stitches. 2, 6. Okay, and that's row 22. We're back to 16 stitches. Now we're doing row 23, and that is actually where we stopped doing the sides. So we are just going to do a pattern of 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and then mark it. 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then a decrease. 1 single crochet into the next 2 stitches, and then a decrease. Do you see the pattern? 1 single crochet into the next stitch, 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then a decrease. And then one more time, one single crochet into the next 2 stitches, and then a decrease. All right, we're almost there. Now we are at row 24, and I'm honestly a little bit torn on how I like doing this. I think what I'm gonna do is a decrease into every stitch around, but I also considered continuing the pattern from before. So it would be 1 single crochet, decrease, 1 single crochet, decrease. I did it different ways on here. So this shape had the 1 single crochet decrease, and then this one kind of just like jumped into fully decreasing for this round, and I think I'm gonna go with this round, but I just kind of, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I'm not confusing you. Just ignore me if it was confusing and just keep doing what I do. Okay, so I'm going to decrease into every stitch of this round. So into the first 2 stitches, and then put in the stitch marker, and then a second decrease, and there we go, one last decrease. So it's a decrease all the way around. All right, we've made it to the last row. I feel like my stitches are getting worse at the very end. But we have 6 stitches. We're gonna decrease into each stitch again. So we'll have an end with 3 stitches. So here is 1 decrease. I'm not gonna use the stitch marker, I'm just gonna count. It's really hard when it gets small. Here's a second decrease. And then here is our last one. Probably don't even need to do the last one. You could just do 2 and leave it. Here we go. We have finished our crochet poop emoji. It's time to cut the yarn and pull it through. My stitches were very loose at the end, but that doesn't really matter. And then just take this loose end, thread your needle, and then take the thread and weave in your loose end. And just make sure everything's secure. You can kind of overlap the yarn while you're weaving it in to make sure it's held securely. But I kind of just wing it, so do the best you can. And then once you feel good about that, I snip the end. There we go. Almost done. We've finished the body. Let's see if it works. It's definitely a tight fit, and I think this one's tighter than the other ones because I was kind of like doing it on camera, so my gauge is all tighter. I think it's good that it is tight because it's just gonna get less and less bags as it goes, and you don't want it too loose. But if you want it bigger, just don't hold your gauge too tight, or maybe size up in a hook. You can kind of play around with it. These ones I made off camera are a lot more flexible. Yeah, that was so much easier. I guess that goes to show how important gauge is because these were made with the same hooks. But anyways, we're not done with this guy yet. So for the eyes, you can kind of like play around with it however you want to do it. These ones I made a little bit longer. They look more like the poop emoji. I put them in the center of each. You can move one up or down or something like that. I thought these ones were cute. They're a little bit too small, but I liked how they're kind of like more like eyes like rounded versus this long shape. You know, it's whatever you want to do. I did buy a set of these plastic eyes on Amazon, and it came with a bunch of different sizes. So these ones are actually bigger. I think they are 12 millimeter, and these ones are 9, but I was playing with everything from like maybe 14 millimeter to like an 8 millimeter, but you can just kind of do whatever you want. Or if you don't want to use the plastic eyes, you don't have them, you want to buy them, you could just cut out black circles of felt, and then I would just glue both the layers down. All right, so let's make this guy some eyes. This is another one of my least favorite parts. I hate cutting small circles of felt. It's hard. So I'm gonna take a piece of felt and I'm gonna kind of fold it in half to cut 2 at once, or you can just do one at a time and kind of use the first one as kind of like a map for it. Just kind of gonna cut it out in a circle. These are way too big, so I just kind of like trim it down. Still a little big, I'm gonna make them a little bit smaller. Looks kind of scary without the pupils. All right, then I grab eyes. I think I'm gonna do a little bit bigger. So I'm going for 12 millimeters again. If I can grab them. Just wanna make sure that there is still some white space around the eye. Looks like it's good. Now I need to get it through the center of the felt, and that's kind of a pain. I was using scissors before, but I was thinking maybe I can poke a hole with my, I don't know where all my needles go. That didn't work. If you have a better method for this, let me know. I don't even like the eyes I bought, so if you have eyes that you like using too, I'm curious, let me know. There we go. There's one eye. So yeah, this is really fun. Just snip little holes into the felt. There we go. There we have the second eye. All right, so now we're happy with our eyes. We need to figure out where we're placing it onto our piece, and I kind of just like poke it through one of the crochet stitches. I don't do it into like a specific spot. It's probably changing too, depending on the size you make your eyes. So I just kind of wing it. I think that looks good. So once you're happy with your placement, you're gonna kind of open the mouth and grab the back end, I forget what these are actually called, and just snap it on. Then do the other one. There we go. For this one, since the pupils are kind of like a lot bigger, I was considering gluing this down as well, even with the snap eyes with it, just to kind of hold it into place, but I haven't yet, and I don't have my glue with me. These eyes look kind of scary. I think they might be too big for the pupils. These ones came out much better. But that's okay. This was just for tutorial purposes. Our very last step is adding the clip. I got the crochet pattern down, but I'm not sure what kind of clip people would want to use. I have these at home, so I use this, and I think it's great because it's really easy to attach. You don't have to like sew it onto a specific part, and it's easy to clip to a dog leash too. So all I do is just open it up and take like the sharp end, and then find an area at the top and go in between some stitches and push it through some stitches on the other side. Here we go. It's ready for action. We just need to put the doggy bags in there. Perfect. And there you have it. Now you know how to make a crochet poop emoji dog poop bag holder. I can't believe those words just came out of my mouth, but you're gonna have the cutest leash out there, or maybe it would make a good gift for a friend. But yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully this pattern was easy to follow, and if you have any questions about anything, just let me know. I'm here to help. And oh yeah, and if you end up making it, let me know. I'm always curious who ends up making my patterns. But yeah, anyways, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.